Hello, it's Eleanor from Hastings Museum and Art Gallery again. I hope you've had a good week and the end of lockdown hasn't been too stressful for you. This week we are making simple gifts from things that you have at home or that you could get easily from the supermarket. So we're making story dice for...
These story dice make a great present for a small person who loves making up stories and creative writing. Images you draw or stick onto each dice give cues for a new story based on the combination of pictures thrown. You can use words too, actions, emotions, or descriptive words. You can make your story dice to match the recipient's current interests and passions, and possibly having an overall theme like fairy tales, monsters, or trains. Create 3 to 6 cubes with an image or word on each side. There are various materials you can use to make your dice: wood, cardboard, or salt dough. I tried to use salt dough, but as you can see, it didn't go according to plan. So I would suggest using cardboard instead. I found the cardboard from a biscuit box worked well, and luckily it was plain on the inside. Use a template like this one to help you cut out a flat pack cube, complete with the tabs to stick it together. Making them from cardboard means you can plan out and draw, stick or write on each side while it's still flat, which is an advantage. It also means you could send them still flat to someone you won't get to see at Christmas, and then they can make the cubes themselves. Start by cutting out a piece of card the same size as your box template, whether you've printed one out or you've hand-drawn one. Use paper clips to keep the template in place. Cut out the main chunks of the outline first, then cut out the spaces between the tabs. Remove the template and the paper clips. And then you need to use a knife or one blade of a pair of scissors to score a line where you'll need to fold the tabs and sides of the cube. Sketch your pictures in pencil first and then use a permanent marker to draw them on the sides of your cube. On the next page, I've given you some suggestions for what to draw. When you finish drawing in permanent marker, rub out the pencil marks. You're then ready to stick your cube together. I use double-sided tape, but you could also use glue instead. If you do use glue, try putting the cube between books to keep the tabs in place while the glue dries. Once your cube is done, you can move on to making the others in your set. Think about the elements of the stories you'd like to be possible using the story dice. I came up with 6 dice, one each for different elements of the stories: places, animals, ways to travel, characters, emotions, and weather. We are British after all. If you're not confident at drawing, try using the Noun Project website for ideas on how to simplify your pictures. It doesn't matter if your drawings don't look exactly the same. Mine definitely don't. It also doesn't matter if the person using the story dice thinks a picture or icon means something different to what you intended. They will interpret the images as they want and make up the stories that come to them. The beads for this necklace are made from paper, wound around a skewer and stuck down with glue. You can use old magazines or colour in plain paper. Use different widths and lengths of paper to make different shaped beads. If you make your necklace long enough to go over the recipient's head, you won't even need a fastener. Choose a page or picture from an old magazine, or use colouring pencils to decorate a sheet of plain paper. On the back of the sheet, draw out a guide like this one to help you cut out your paper strips. They should be at least 20 centimetres long, but I found that 30 centimetres long worked better with thin paper. Cut out the strips with scissors. You'll need a bamboo skewer, knitting needle or something similar to wind your paper around. Getting started is the trickiest bit, as the paper doesn't always want to roll round the skewer. Use a glue stick along the back of the strip, leaving just the widest bit unsticky. Then, holding the strip between thumb and forefinger, roll the paper over a couple of times, hopefully getting to the sticky part of the strip so it stays in place. If it refuses to cooperate, that's fine, you can just start again. Keep rolling the paper around the skewer. Try to make sure that the paper stays in the middle so that your bead will be the same thickness at each end. While the glue is still damp, you should be able to gently push the paper back into position if needed. Once you've finished wrapping the strip, leave the bead for a few minutes to really stick, and then gently ease it off the skewer by pushing from one end of the bead. Repeat until you have enough beads to make your necklace, and then leave them overnight to fully dry out. Your beads need to be sealed to make them stronger and less likely to disintegrate if they get wet. You can use PVA glue, varnish, or clear nail varnish, which is what I used. Thread the beads back onto the skewers so you can paint them with the varnish. I found it really helped to put a clothes peg on one end of the skewer to stop the beads falling off the end, but also to prop up the skewer so I could hold it with one hand at the other end and paint the varnish with my spare hand. Place your skewers on a glass, a bowl, or anything that allows the air to get to the beads while the varnish dries. Finally, use thread or wool to make your necklace. If you're using thread, you can use a needle to help you thread the beads. If you're using wool, try wrapping a piece of sellotape around the end so that you've got a rigid point to push through the beads. If you make a necklace long enough to go over the head, you can just tie the thread or wool when you're happy with the length. If you'd prefer to make a shorter necklace, you'll need to have a fastening so it's easy to put on and take off. These bird feeders are simple and quick to make and a perfect gift for bird lovers. But do please be careful. They contain peanut butter, so don't try to make this bird feeder if you're allergic to peanuts, and please don't try to give it to anyone who's allergic to peanuts either. Start by brushing any loose dirt from your pine cone with an old toothbrush. Use a length of string to make a loop and tie it around the top scales of the pine cone. Leave enough string free to tie the feeder to a branch, washing line, or other hanging place. Then put the pine cone on a plate to catch any mess. Push the peanut butter into the spaces between the scales of the cone. I found the handle end of a teaspoon worked quite well to help with this. Take off any excess peanut butter so you can still see the ends of the scale sticking through. We do want people to know it's made from a pine cone after all. Hold the pine cone by the string and pour over the birdseed so it sticks to the peanut butter. The plate will catch any seed that doesn't stick, and you can use this to fill in any gaps where the seed didn't go. Wrap the pine cone in some greaseproof paper and tie up with a ribbon. Keep your wrapped bird feeder in the fridge or somewhere cool until it's time to give it, to keep the peanut butter fresh and stop it melting. Our final make are these chocolate truffles. They're very simple to make, but you do need to leave time for the mixture to cool in the fridge. They're very rich and deliciously bad for you, so just a small jar of them makes a perfect treat. The main ingredients are dark chocolate, 285 grams, which is about 1.5 large bars, 30 grams or 2 tablespoons of butter, and 125 milliliters or half a cup of double cream. You'll also want something powdery that you can roll the truffles in so they don't stick to each other in the jar. That could be desiccated coconut, cocoa powder, icing sugar, crushed nuts, or anything that you're inspired to try. Your chocolate needs to be in small pieces, so you could either use chocolate chips or start with chocolate bars and then break them down into smaller chunks. Break the chocolate up into pieces using the lines in the bar and then cut them up into smaller pieces with a knife or put them in a sealable plastic bag and bash with a rolling pin. Don't hit it too hard or the bag might burst. Then put the chocolate into a microwavable bowl and add the butter and cream. Heat the ingredients in the microwave on high for 4 bursts of 30 seconds, stirring the mixture in between each burst. Leave the mixture for 5 minutes to make sure all the chocolate chunks have melted. Stir again and then put in the fridge to set for 6 hours. Put a plate on top of the bowl in the fridge. This means you'll have a good cold surface to put your finished truffles on when you get to the next stage. After 6 hours, take the mixture out of the fridge. It should be softer than cold butter, but harder than peanut butter. If it's too hard, try leaving it on the side in the kitchen to warm up a little. Put your truffle coating in a separate bowl ready to roll the truffles in. And this is where it gets messy. You need your hands to be cold, so you might need to hold them under cold water if necessary, to try and stop the truffle melting in your hand. I found that I had to wash my hands in cold water in between making each truffle because they were just getting too warm. Take a teaspoon of the mix and roll it into a ball between the palms of your hands. Try to work quickly so the truffle melts as little as possible. Then roll the truffle in the coating that you prepared in the other bowl. Don't worry if they're not perfectly round. The ones you get from the shops aren't either. Put your finished truffles on the cold plate while you make the rest. At this point, I need to confess that my mixture was solid out of the fridge. It should be softer than cold butter, probably because I left it in the fridge overnight. So perhaps if it's too hard, try leaving it on the side in the kitchen to warm up. I found the outside of my truffles melted in my hand while the middle stayed so solid. Put your truffle coating in a separate bowl, ready to roll the truffles. I tried using 2 teaspoons, and this is where it gets a round shape. You need your hands to be cold. In the end, I just cut rough cubes and hold them under cocoa and icing sugar, and to try and stop the truffle melting in your hand. I've decided the kind of person that I had to wash my hands in cold water in between making each truffle because they were just getting too warm. When you finish making them, take a teaspoon of the mix and roll it into a jam jar with the ribbon of your hands. If you don't have a lid for the jar, use a round piece of greaseproof paper, then roll the truffle in a coating, and then tie ribbon over the rubber band to hide it. Don't worry if they're not perfectly round. Keep your jar of truffles away from radiators, warm places, and chocoholics. Put your finished truffles on the cold plate while you make the rest. After 6 hours, take the mixture out of the fridge. It should be softer than cold butter, but harder than peanut butter. If it's too hard, try leaving it on the side in the kitchen to warm up a little.
I hope you had the right things at home to have a go at
Put your truffle coating in a separate bowl, ready to roll the truffles in.
If you'd like to share what you've done,
and this is where it gets messy.
Please share it.
You need your hands to be cold, so you might need to hold them under cold water if necessary to try and stop the truffle melting in your hand. I found that I had to